My name is Garrett Hill. I am the head judge for World Skate Street Skateboarding, and today we're going to be doing a recap video on the Paris 2024 Olympic Games. Men and women, we're going to be breaking down prelims and finals, runs, and single tricks. One thing that's really important to keep in mind is that going into the games, we wanted it to show really well. It was on the biggest stage. There were going to be tens of millions of people watching. So we decided that we were going to inflate some of the scores and be at that higher end of the scale so that all the skating looked really well on television and everybody got to have their moment of having that high 90s score. Starting things off with women, shout out to Chloe Cavell for starting things off for the Olympic Games. It is not easy to go first, and it is definitely not easy to go first at the Olympics. So props to you for starting things off. That is not an easy thing to do. Now, we did see a lot of bails coming into play, especially in the run section for the women. For skaters that we're used to seeing full runs completed by. Unfortunately, those kinds of runs, a lot of them got into the 30s and 40s, and it was really difficult for them to move forward and then into the next round with a score like that in the run section. But nerves are real, and we could definitely see that coming into play at the games. Now, starting with Chloe's run, it's always important to start a run strong and end a run strong. And looking at Chloe's run, she starts it off really, really great with a frontside fleet bowl on the 10-stair round rail, coming into the frontside kickflip on the wedge bump. The judges really like it when you string two tricks like that together. It's creative, it's unique, and especially when the trick isn't just a regular kickflip or a 180 or something really basic. Doing a frontside feeble, which scores pretty well in the single trick section, straight into a frontside flip on the wedge bump is a great way to start that run and really upgrades the overall impression. Looking at some of the filler from this run, kickflip into the Concord bank was a great idea. Going over that rail into the bank was really sketchy and nobody was hitting it. She was the only one that even attempted that, I think. And again, these are things that help you stand out in your run. These are the kinds of things that upgrade that overall impression and help the argument there to inflate a score at the end when we're giving out those numbers. Finishing it off, the only thing I'd say, normally Chloe will end her run with a big section trick as well. It just, for whatever reason, the timing, she wasn't able to get to the big section again. It ended on the backside tail slide on the bump to ledge. And she got a 78 for this run, and I think that without enough time to hit that big section again and have at least two tricks on the big area, that's what kept this run probably out of the 80s. But still, a good enough score, a great score, and good enough for sure to make it through into the finals. I want to give a shout out to Boipelo Aua from South Africa for just coming out and making skateboarding look so good and putting together a really cool line and really putting on for your country. It was rad to see her out there. And she put together a cool line, you know, she landed some tricks. She started off with an ollie on the pyramid, a nose slide on the bump to ledge, coming around to board slide, that 7-stair triumph rail. Unfortunately, there was a bail in this run, and finishing it off with the feeble grind on the bump to rail. Got on the board with a 31. Unfortunately, when you've got basic tricks on the board and then there's a bail thrown in to that mix, it really substantially is going to bring the overall score down. Without that bail, this definitely could have jumped up quite a bit. I want to take a look at one of the runs that still put up a decent score that had a bail in it. Something to keep in mind here is that not all bails are created equal. If you bail on a kickflip on flat ground in your run, it's not going to move the needle that much on your overall score. We're not going to chop the head off of the score because of that. But if you bail on the big section, that constitutes at least 20 points of your score. If you break down the tricks and the statistics of a run, how many tricks are normally in a run, and how much those big section tricks constitute towards the overall score, it's about 20 points. So looking at Zhang Wangwee's run, she starts off really strong with backside lip slide on the 10-stair rail, moves in right away into the kickflip on the wedge bump. Again, we love that 2-piece combo. Following it up with a backside tail slide on the bump to ledge, which was super clean. Now, unfortunately, she bails on the big section, and that's gonna really, really move the needle on that overall score. If she would have bailed on the pyramid or a bump to rail trick, I could see that maybe only affecting it 5 or 10 points, but a bail on the big section is definitely gonna make a bigger impact. She was able to turn it around after that and still get the frontside board slide on the really big bump to A-frame round rail, which we love watching. That spot was really cool to skate. And she got a 55.85, and I would have imagined that without that bail on the big section, that would have felt like 70 skating right there. So that's a good example of how much a bail on the big section is going to affect your overall score. As we move through prelims, we see some really great runs from Haley Powell, from Keat Oldenbooving, and also from Lucy Schooner. These are great runs. They're solid. There's really good tricks in here. We should talk a little bit about the difference between a 60s run and a 70s run. In the 60s, we have Haley Powell and Keat. And something to keep in mind here is that the visual effect of giving out a score is really important. As the head judge, I'm always trying to make sure that score correlates to at least the trick ledger. For instance, if you're doing board slides on the 10-stair in your run, and if the board slide is in the 60s on the trick ledger, if all the other tricks around your board slide in the run are like-minded, are in that range, then that's kind of the range that we're looking at for your run score. It should be in the 60s. If you board slide the rail and then you've got like kickflip back nose bond on the quarter pipe, obviously it's going to shoot up. But if your tricks are like-minded in that board slide on the 10-stair range, we're going to make sure that score isn't drastically too far away from the trick ledger score of what you would get in the single trick section. So having a look at Lucy's run, she starts off with a frontside 5-0 grind on the Bursey hubba, which is definitely going to score higher than a board slide on the 10-stair round rail. She's got a frontside 50-50 on the quarter pipe, and even the frontside 50-50 on the quarter pipe, just the fact that she didn't stop and have to burn seconds by turning around and dropping back in, that little action right there helps her string more tricks together and greatly affects the overall impression. So we don't see that many quarter pipe tricks in the women's division, and I really hope that changes, and the women are working on that right now to make sure that they are doing everything that they can to give themselves an edge, because just the fact that Lucy was able to string together a quarter pipe trick and follow it directly into another cool trick greatly impacts the overall impression. It doesn't seem like it does, but when you're up there in the judging booth, little things like that are what we're looking at. So I want to talk about the importance of having a well-rounded run. A lot of the times I think there are certain riders that think that if I hit the big section more, that's going to guarantee me the highest score. And that is not the case. The judges are not looking for just a best trick section in your run. We don't need you to just hit the big section over and over and over again. What we want to see you do is give us a little bit of everything. We want to see you use the whole course. We want to see you string cool tricks together. We need to see a flip trick thrown into your run. If you can hit the quarter pipe and string 2-3 tricks together that some of your competitors can't do, that's going to give you an edge, and it's going to make your run stand out and score higher. So what I want to look at right now in this case is Funa's run. Now this is a really strong run. It's a great run. She starts off with a frontside crook on the Bercy hubba, which is gigantic. That's her signature move. We expected her to pull that out, and she definitely did, and she did a great job with that. And that's an amazing start. Moving on to a crooked grind on the pyramid bar. Getting the backside 50-50 grind on the bump to ledge, which unfortunately in a run that starts with a frontside crooked grind on a hubba, putting a backside 50-50 on a ledge, it downgrades the overall impression. Unfortunately, there are certain circumstances where just one little trick in your run can really bring down the overall impression, and having the most basic trick that you can do being a 50-50 or a nose slide or a board slide, things like that. I really hope that riders reconsider doing tricks like that, because just putting more tricks into your run doesn't always mean that it's going to have a better and higher run score at the end. After the 50-50, we have a backside lip slide on the 10-stair round rail. Again, she was right back up there with a solid trick on the big section. A front blunt on the big bank to round rail, which is really difficult. Nobody was doing frontside blunt slides on that big A-frame rail. And then again, she ends with a frontside board slide on the 10-stair round rail. Now this is a run. The overall impression of this run is that there are strong tricks here, but she was really focusing on the big section. So if Funa would have filled out this run a little bit more and didn't need to hit that big section on the last frontside board slide, she probably would have jumped up into the 80s with this, because the argument would have been there that this run would have felt more full. So moving forward, I hope riders understand that they don't have to just keep rifling off tricks on the big section in order to get a high score. Let's talk about the highest scoring run of prelims, and that is a course from Liz Akama, who absolutely crushed it. We were so impressed with this run. Starting off with a frontside feeble grind on the pyramid bar. She was the only person that didn't start her run on the big section. One of the only people that didn't start their run on the big section. And even that alone helps set you apart from the rest of the field. It makes your run feel unique, and it makes your run feel different, because the judges like to see you be creative. How can you move through this course in a different way that's more creative than the rest of your competitors? It'll give you an edge. So great job there, starting off with that frontside feeble on the pyramid bar. Immediately into the kickflip on the step up, which sets her up to hit that big section with a backside Smith grind on the 10-stair round rail, which is a great trick. So far this is a really strong run. And right after that, she strings the frontside 360 on the wedge bump, which is great. That a frontside feeble and then straight into a frontside 360 on the wedge bump. Even though the gap isn't big on the wedge, she was the only person doing frontside 360s. So the fact that she not only started her run in a different spot, and the fact that she's doing tricks that nobody else is doing really helps set this run apart from the rest of the pack. So after the frontside 360, we've got a frontside big spin on the pyramid gap. Again, signature move, no one's doing it, helps her set apart. And then a frontside 180 nose grind on the Bercy hubba. A lot of really difficult tricks here. A lot of those tricks score really well on the single trick ledger. It's not a 90s run. It still needed something else in order to make that jump, but it got an 86, and that's a strong score for a strong run. something that is really important to remember, especially for the women, that in order to get into the 90s, you need to have a bang and run that fulfills all of the criteria of the judging criteria, all 5 categories. It's not rocket science. The more full your run is, and if you've got that technical difficulty to back it up, there will be no argument not to put you into the 90s. So if you have a technically difficult run and you don't have bails, you use the course really well. That means including throwing in a quarter pipe trick, and you have flip tricks in there. It doesn't feel like it's flat, or you're not flipping your board around and taking that risk. And if you have all of these things, you're gonna get a really great score. It will be very difficult for us to not put you into the 90s when you have all of those things checked off. In prelims, moving into the single trick section, we saw some really great skateboarding here. And there were a couple of instances where we wanted to send a message, right? That phrase comes up a lot when we're in the judging booth. We're like, all right, well, let's send a message with this trick and let skaters know that we're gonna reward you for skating certain obstacles. And that big pyramid fly out rail was exactly one of those spots that we wanted to reward and send a message to the skaters that we were gonna hook them up if they skated that, even doing more basic tricks on it. And Pamela Rosa is a great example of that. Even though it didn't come together for Pamela in the runs, she really kicked ass in that single trick section by skating that thing first and setting the bar and letting the rest of the field know you're going to get rewarded if you skate this big gap out rail. We put a lip slide into the 80s and a Smith grind at an 83. And it's, maybe that seems high, but we wanted to absolutely hook up the fact that there was a huge risk there. It was a really big gap, and especially if you're skating something that nobody else is skating, you should get rewarded for that. Even more basic tricks like a lip slide in the grand scheme of tricks skateboarding can still get you a really great score if you pick the right obstacle to do it on. On this very same fly out pyramid gap to round rail, there is a perfect example of how repetition comes in and affects your score in the single trick section. So Poe Pinson, who skated great and made it into finals and definitely earned it, was another skater like Pamela who skated that large fly out gap to rail. They both did Smith grinds on it. Pamela got an 83, but Poe got an 81. And simply put, the only reason why Poe didn't get the same score as Pamela is because Poe did a Smith grind in her run. She did it on the pyramid flat bar. And when you already do that trick, you can't get the full amount moving into the single trick section. It's not a huge number that we take off, but you still can't get the overall amount. 83 was the full amount that you could have gotten for doing a Smith grind on that gap to rail. And Poe was close to that, but that's how repetition comes into play when we're scoring the single trick section. Another reminder about repetition is that if you do the same trick on the same spot moving into the single trick section, you're gonna see an even more substantial deduction because it's more of a heavy repetition deduction. Like if you're doing the same exact trick on the same spot, that's not very creative. The judges don't love seeing it, and we don't feel like that's fair to the rest of the field who are trying new tricks and taking the risk. So you're gonna see a bigger deduction if you do the same trick on the same spot. So overall, in the prelims single trick section, we only saw one trick in the 90s, and that was Raisa Leal doing the kickflip backside lip slide. If you want to get into the 90s, I mean, you got to flip your board. It seems very, very difficult in the women's division to make it into that 90s category without flipping your board. There are a couple of exceptions from tricks I remember, but it's a great way. Flipping your board is a great way of guaranteeing a strong score on the board. And this scale will probably change I can almost guarantee you that it will change. We're seeing frontside feebles and backside Smith grinds in the low 80s for this competition, and I doubt those tricks will stay in the 80s moving forward, but because it was the Olympics again, like I said, we were inflating scores across the board for everything. All right, moving into finals for women. Firstly, there wasn't any runs that did make it into the 90s. And the only reason why that is because there wasn't one single run that fulfilled all of the judging criteria. In order to make it into the 90s for a run, you need to not only check all the boxes of the 5 different categories of the judging criteria, but it needs to feel special. There needs to be a moment in there that's really unique or really technically difficult and gets that reaction out of the judges. And unfortunately, we didn't have that moment for women. We were really, really close, but I think what would be beneficial here is if I go through some of these runs and we talk about them, and I can kind of let you know what it needed. What does the run need in order to jump up into the next category? Having a closer look at Paige Hines' run, I really like Paige's skating. I think she's got a super sick style and a really unique way of skating the course. She's also one of the only women out there who are hitting the big section switch. And the judges always reward that. We reward switch skating, especially for the women, and we definitely reward tricks that are switch on the big section. So it's smart of Paige to do that. Looking at her run, I can tell you that this is a really cool run, adding in the switch frontside board slide on the big section. This run landed her a 76 in finals. It was a really cool run, but what I'm looking at is that this run doesn't have a flip trick in it, and this run also doesn't have any quarter pipe tricks in it. Now, having a flip trick in your run is incredibly important. It's risky. It makes the run feel more full, and it allows you to give the judges a little bit more variety. The risk is definitely here in Paige's run with the switch frontside board slide on the big section and like-minded tricks. But without a flip trick and without quarter pipe tricks and without that use of course variation, it's very difficult to put a run like this into the 80s. Now, she looked stoked on the 76, and she should be. It was a great score for a great run. With some flip tricks and with some quarter pipe tricks, with some variation, this exact run could have easily been into the 80s. And that's exactly how that works. You need to give the judges an argument there to place your score into a higher bracket. And the best way you're going to be able to do that is to add more of the judging criteria. Fulfill that judging criteria, and that will get you into the next spot. Now, in the finals runs, I want to talk about Raisa's line because she still made it into the 70s with a bail. And this is a very good example of the different kinds of deductions we give for bails. Now, this fall wasn't on the big section. This wasn't a massive part of her run. It was a filler trick. It was what the judges would call a bid-light. We normally call the big section tricks highlights, but we're not gonna take a 20-point deduction, 25-point deduction, because this bail didn't fill that much of her run. It didn't account for that much of her overall run. Now, with the technical difficulty and her picking it right back up and ending with a frontside blunt slide on the handrail, on the 10-stair rail, which nobody else did, it's a great way to pick back up after a bail, which is really difficult to do. But even the 71, which is a great run score, assuming that was probably around a 10-point deduction, easily this run would have been in the 80s without that bail. So that's exactly how different kinds of bails affect your overall run score. Another great example of how bails affect your overall run score is Chloe. So Chloe had a very close and very similar run score to Raisa, and it's no big surprise there because they both had falls in their runs. Neither of them had falls on the big section because without those bails, they both would have been in the 80s. But Chloe also had highlights just the same way that Raisa did. She kickflipped the big set, the 10 stair, and we love seeing that. Judges love seeing flip tricks downstairs. It was something in the past that we felt like went under rewarded. So now, like especially me, I always make sure that we're hooking up flip tricks down the stairs because it's really risky, especially in the women's division. This is really going to help move the needle because people aren't really doing it, and we like to reward tricks like this. Speaking to overall impression, why it's so important to end your run with a special moment is that that's the last thing that you're showing the judges. Right before they're about to give you a score, your last trick has got to be something cool. It's got to be something exciting. There were a few runs in the finals where they just ended either with no speed or on a smaller obstacle, or there was maybe 3 or 4 seconds once the last trick was ended that the skaters had extra that they just rode out instead of doing another trick. That really affects the overall impression. You have 45 seconds to land tricks. You got to use all of that time. If you have enough time to hit the quarter pipe afterwards, do a quarter pipe trick. If you have enough time to hit another bang to rail, whatever it is, do that. The judges want to see you use that full time and look hungry and get after it. Style and execution is a big part of the judging criteria. If you don't slide a ledge very long, or if you don't get into a crooked grind well, or if you land with no speed, that's a part of style and execution. That is the way that you do that trick, and we have to take that into consideration when we're scoring you. So if your last trick is a backside tail slide on a bump to ledge and you don't slide the whole thing and you land going 1 mile an hour, and that's the last trick in your run, that's what we're left with, that greatly affects the overall impression. So understand that when you formulate your strategy, please end it with something exciting. It's going to benefit you greatly. So let's talk about Coco's run in the finals. This is a really, really great run. She made some upgrades from her first run and it really paid off. She started off with a kickflip frontside board slide on the 7-stair Triumph rail, which is super sick. Nobody else did that. Alling up that step up. Coming around and doing the big spin frontside board slide on the 10-stair round rail. Really great choice. That's a really difficult trick to do on that 10-stair for the women's division. So props to her. That was a great choice. Right afterwards, following it up with a kickflip on the wedge bump into the backside Smith grind on the pyramid rail, into a backside tail slide on the bump to ledge, and then ending it out with that backside lip slide on the 10-stair rail. The only thing that I can imagine that kept this run out of the 90s is the fact that the flip tricks were both kick flips. If Coco may have done a heel flip or a 360 flip, a hard flip, something more special than a kick flip on the wedge bump, there would have been more of an argument there to bump this run up into the high 80s, maybe even into the 90s, especially if there was a unique flip trick and a quarter pipe trick. That would have been every single one of the judging criteria fulfilled, and we would have had the argument to put that run into the 90s. But because those things were there and because those things were missing, it didn't feel right to put that higher than we did. But again, 86 was a really high score. It's a great score for this run, and she earned it. Now, let's talk about the highest scoring run of finals, and that, of course, was from Liz Akama. Liz's skating is so much fun to watch, and I really appreciate, and I know the judges appreciate, her doing tricks that nobody else is doing. We love seeing that. It always helps her stand out from the pack. And so we see this in her run, starting off with the frontside feeble grind on the pyramid bar, straight into the kickflip on the step up, doing the big upgrade into the barley grind on the 10-stair round rail, which was done so well. We loved that. She locked in all the way to the end. Execution was perfect. Coming around straight into a frontside 360 on the wedge bump. To do the barley grind and then follow that up directly with a frontside 360 on the wedge bump, phenomenal choice. That's exactly what I'm talking about, creating these special moments within your run that are gonna make you stand out. After that, coming around into the frontside big spin on the pyramid gap and ending with her signature frontside 180 nose grind on the Bursey hubba. Now that got her an 89.29, and I remember this is a good time to talk about what else would have been needed to put this run into the 90s. The only judging criteria that wasn't fulfilled here was that use of course and implementing a quarter pipe trick. If she would have had a quarter pipe trick, and maybe even if she would have done the frontside big spin heel flip on the pyramid gap instead of the frontside big spin, which we've seen her do, there would have been no argument not to put that run into the 90s. Little adjustments like this can visually make a very big difference and could definitely impact the thought process of the judges. So more full run equals higher score. Moving into the single trick section, again, we saw some really great skateboarding and some really cool moves. Now I want to talk about Poe Pinson real quick because this is a great example of how repetition changes your score. So if you remember, in prelims, Poe did a fly out on the pyramid gap to rail. She did a Smith grind on that and she got an 81 when Pamela got an 83. And the reason why Poe got an 81 is because she already did a Smith grind in her run. Now here we are in finals. She does that same exact Smith grind, does it perfect, the same way she did in semifinals, and she gets an 83 now. Now why would that happen? Well, the judges are always looking at the run that counts. So in finals, Poe switched up the order of her run and she actually didn't do a Smith grind in her run. So because she didn't do the Smith grind in her run, that gave her access to the full point total for doing that Smith grind on the fly out to gap to rail. Now 2 points may not seem like a lot at first glance, but when you're looking at overall point totals and someone who's winning and someone who's getting second being under a point, repetition is important. The effects of a 2-point deduction are important. They are substantial. So always implement that into your strategy and be aware that in a competition where you need to fight, kick, and scratch for every single 10th of a point, a small deduction like that could mean the difference of you winning a competition and getting second. With Haisa, again, we see that signature kickflip backside lip slide, getting a very well-deserved 92 for that. She did it absolutely perfectly, and there's not much more we could ask for. Doing a flip trick into the big section rail, it was a big rail. The risk is there, the execution was there. There was no repetition deductions because she did not do a kickflip backside lip slide in her run. Full point total, great choice. Also receiving an 88 for the kickflip frontside board slide. No repetition deduction there. She's got really great tricks and she earned third place. And these tricks scored so high that even though her run score with the 71 having a bail in it, she was still able to podium. And that's really, really sick. And she earned it. Great skateboarding is going to put you up there high on the podium. So congrats to her. In the single trick section, I want to give a shout out to Paige for trying that switch frontside feeble grind on the big rail. That would have been the first time that trick had ever been done, and having that being done at the Olympics would have been a great choice and would have been a great moment and definitely would have been a big score. So props for trying that. It was worth the risk. Sometimes it doesn't pan out and you don't get the trick that you want to get, but the strategy and the coaching is still there and is still on point. So props to her. I want to give a shout out to Funa and Chloe in this single trick section of the finals. They both had kind of a rough time. Unfortunately, neither of them were able to get any points on the board in this section, which affected obviously their overall ranking. But they were both going for it, man. Funa and Chloe were both trying really, really difficult tricks. And just like Paige, sometimes the risk is there. You have to take that risk in order to put yourself high on that podium. And when it comes together, it's incredible. And sometimes it just doesn't. But overall, all these women should be incredibly proud of the way that they skated. And the judges loved watching it. We really, really appreciated the skateboarding from these women. Talking about Chen Chi Kui, great skateboarding from her, man. She's got tricks that nobody else is really doing, especially this kickflip melon grab that she did down the 10 stair. Nobody else is doing kickflip melon grabs, and that's a pretty specific trick that not too many people in the streets are doing. It did get scored a little bit higher than a straight kickflip on the 10 stair because legally, if you look at it, grabbing your board and melon is harder than just doing a straight kickflip. I don't know if that will stay true forever moving forward, but she got hooked up a little bit more than that regular kickflip, and she earned it. She did the grab well, and she rolled away clean and with speed, and there was no reason not to hook her up with a little bit more points than a straight kickflip. Now again, talking about how repetition came into play in the final section, Coco also kickflip frontside board slid the handrail, but she only got an 86, as opposed to Raisa, who kickflip frontside board slid the same handrail. They both did it perfect, and Raisa got an 88. Now again, remember, if you do a trick in your run already, you're not going to get the full point total moving into the single trick section. And that's a great example of this coming into play here. Coco started her run with the kickflip frontside board slide on the Triumph rail. It's the same trick on a different spot, and that's a minor repetition deduction, which resulted in the 86 instead of the 88. Now, luckily, strategy-wise, Coco was able to drop that kickflip frontside board slide and replace that with the frontside hurricane grind, which was super sick. Again, judges always reward tricks that you don't really see, and that being the perfect kind of trick in that category. We hooked that up, and that got an 89, which dropped that 86 from the kickflip frontside board slide. And man, the big spin flip frontside board slide from Coco on the 10 stair rail, getting the 96, so well earned and so well deserved. The risk there is gigantic. That's such a monumental trick to do in the women's division, and the judges absolutely loved it. We were freaking out over that. So congratulations to Coco. She did an absolutely monumental job, pushed skateboarding forward so far for women, and yeah, should be incredibly proud. It was a well-earned win on her part. Now, Liz Akama was so close to taking the win. It really did come down to last tricks. I believe Liz maybe needed an 87.20 only in order to put herself above Coco in overall points. And she was trying the frontside feeble frontside 180. Now, historically, that trick has always been in the 90s because of the difficulty level there. And if she would have landed it, that would have put her in that top spot. They were incredibly close, and Liz did just such a great job, and she earned that second place. She skated really well. So Liz came in with the frontside 270 lip slide, which is a huge trick. She's done that once or twice before, and that got a 92. Great score for a great trick. Big risk involved in that, and again, nobody else is doing it. So that's always going to put you above the norm if you're doing tricks that nobody else is doing. So overall, a huge congratulations to all of the women that skated in the Paris Games. You're now Olympians. You earned it. You worked so hard to get to this moment, and I hope that everyone was proud of the way that they did. I know that everybody did your country proud, and it was just a pleasure to watch, and it was such a special experience to be a part of. So thank you to all the women who competed in the 2024 Paris Olympic Games.